Today we're going to be looking at some of the typical examples of the installation of the Pervectron 6.6 in different applications that go with it. The product, yes, 6.6 is the top. This is a hinged mast that appears to be approximately a 20-foot mast. This is a close-up of the S6.6. As you can see, there are 6 different probes on the bottom, 6 different probes on the top. Inside here, there's capacitors for each one of the lower and upper probes. You can also see the lock bolt that's here on the top to make sure that this Pervectron stays in on top of the lock nut that's right here. So we have a double purpose mounting on this product. This is down at the base. This shows a bond plate that goes on to the mast. The down conductors come over to the through roof assemblies and go down to 2 different down conductors that go the opposite way of each other. This is a secondary bond that appears to go right over here to the cap and makes that bond so we don't have it jumping over to the parapet cap. This is a gravity mount base. If you don't want to have a penetration in your roof, or can't have, instead of having a weld mount base that goes through and welds to the steel, we use a gravity mount type of base. These are all poured with concrete and weigh about 80 pounds apiece. You have the same bolt hole pattern as what you have with the weld mount base. You attach onto it, and as you can see, here goes one down conductor, and here's another down conductor coming over. This happens to be a secondary bond going back to someplace where I don't see. This is a close-up of the bond plate. Shows you how the cap goes down and clamps onto the conductor to make sure that we have a very good connection between the mast, which serves as an upper down conductor, to the lower down conductor. All parts here are stainless steel as far as the fasteners. This is a tin-coated bronze. This is the hinged mount base. It shows you where it hinges right over here and shows you the connection that you have onto this is a weld mount base down here. These are stainless steel nuts, bolts, and washers that come with the product. There's also an example of exactly how to assemble those nuts, bolts, and washers, and it's very important that you follow those instructions. These are also used as leveling devices for the mast, so you can adjust to make sure that that pole is exactly level. And it's very important that you do that, and again, it is on the instructions that come with it. This is a base. It's not a weld mount base, but you see it has another flat area down here that we use fasteners to go underneath of the roof deck and make the connection to a plate here underneath, so that we have a secure mount for the base. This underneath here is concrete, and then we have a layer of foam insulation, and then we have the roofing. That would have to be patched by the roofer, and that would be something that the roofer has to do and not an installer. This again is a weld mount base. This goes through, or this would be a weld mount or the other one that I just showed you with 2 plates. Comes up. You can see that there's leveling here. Also, what that does is give space so that we have ventilation that goes underneath there, and we don't have water standing and all of a sudden have corrosion on this steel weld mount base and against the aluminum up here. This is the cable coming over to the through roof assemblies, and then we branch off and start to bond everything that's within 15 feet of these main down conductors that are coming off here. This shows a main conductor run, and we come off of that run with a splicer over to this unit, and we bond to it, and we do every one of them that's around here to make sure that we have continuity between anything within 15 feet of the main conductor run. This shows a typical bond that we do to any type of pipe. You clear it down to bright steel or copper in this case, and then we come off with a main size conductor to the conductor run that's down here. This is a secondary bond to a parapet cap. This is like a number 6 wire that comes down to a main conductor run, and then we have a bond fitting up here that goes in and actually screws into that cap. This would be structural steel that apparently we want to bond to. We're coming down here with a down conductor. We splice off of here, come up, and we do an exothermic weld to the structural steel. As you can see, you got to clean it down to bright steel before you make that weld. This is a down conductor coming out to the tripod ground arrangement that we have. This is the ground rod right here, and then the other cable that goes around to the other 2 ground rods out here is tied together with Burndy high press. It's what we typically use for the down conductors and on the ground rods. This is an inspection well. Again, shows a Burndy high ground onto it and a Burndy high ground to splice off to it. Every one of these has got to be below 10 ohms resistance on the tripod grounds. This shows a 2.10 resistance, which is very good. Again, this is an exposed down conductor to a Burndy high ground that's spliced and taken off in two locations. This is a trenched area between the tripod grounds. It shows the main conductor run coming over here, splicing onto this cable and connecting to this ground rod. Each one of these ground rods is a minimum of 10 feet apart. This is an overall. It shows a ground rod here, here, and here, and the cable connects it all together. When this is driven down, these should be approximately 18 inches below grade. This is an example of a weld plate for a ground plate. It's actually welded onto this piece of copper. It's used in place of ground rods. It can be used when you have very shallow topsoil before you hit bedrock. If you have maybe too much water or something close to it, it's a good way to make a very excellent ground when you have problems like that exist. And that takes you through some typical examples of the construction that we go through.